Hey, this is Cool Trains in Montreal, and I want to share with you a little bit more rolling stock and a little bit of a new locomotive that I have. So this is a Lifelike C424, ALCO C424 from maybe the 1960s, 70s, and this is in the Canadian Pacific CP scheme from I think the late 80s when they would have dropped the multimark symbol at the back. It's not a bad locomotive. When I got it back in, let's see, probably the late 90s, I guess. It was pretty a long time ago when this came out. No, it wasn't the 90s. It was 2006, I think. 2006. Anyway, this is like a 20-year-old locomotive probably now. But these engines, they're pretty good runners. And when I got them, when I got this locomotive, it came with the horn hook couplers, so I recently got Tony over at Hobby Junction to change out the couplers for me. So for the first time in 20 years, this locomotive is now compatible with the rest of my rolling stock. So, and also I'd like to show some of my rolling stock here. This is CP Rail, and these are grain cars. Most of them are grain cars anyway, in 3 different schemes. And there are also a couple of different manufacturers here. So let's see this CP Rail locomotive in action. Well, it's not too bad. I mean, it hums a bit. That's the only complaint I think I have with this locomotive. But slow speed is pretty good. I ran it in a bit. I never did any lubrication on it. It's not like it did a lot of running though, so it does work pretty well. Detail wise, it's not too bad. I mean, it's not Kato, it's not Atlas, but it's good. Now, the paint schemes of these locomotives were somewhat inaccurate, as I have another one that has bad striping on the front. And I hadn't changed the couplers on it yet either. I don't know what I'm going to do with it because it's not a good paint scheme. But this one works well. It's got the proper paint scheme. So it's pushing these Trinity hopper cars that I got around 2007, I guess it was, from Exact Rail. These are pretty good. When they came out, they were a really good deal. Probably because the company was new. Nowadays, these are considerably more expensive than when I got them. And they are really nice. And they feature the paint scheme that I really like too, which is the modern beaver shield. The CP rail here is nice with the red, but I mean, it doesn't represent the greatest of CP schemes. It's more minimalist than I kind of liked, but it was properly painted. So, and it's a really cool to have an ALCO. ALCOs are, well, somewhat rare from what my collection is. So, also what's neat are these silver Intermountain cylindrical hopper cars. So the silver ones, as you notice, have the round hatches. These little hatches here are not for grain service. This would be for granules of, I don't know, sulfur or something like that, I guess, some more chemical stuff. I'm not sure whether these cars had like one single storage space in here or if they had bulkheads and that you could store different chemicals in the different bulkheads, and that's why they had the hatches that you could put one type of granular chemical in one of those hatches, and then in another hatch in another bulkhead store more something different, but I don't know. And then you have these black hopper cars, CP Rail, and these have the troughs. So these would have been for more for wheat service, other than the Canadian wheat board cars. And I really like the black. I mean, that is striking, isn't it? The CP rail with black and then the red multimark. And the silver ones are also very striking, I find. That's why I like them. The silver ones also work very well. These are, again, both Intermountain cars. So I have 5 of these black cars, and then I have 3 of those silver cars, and I have 1 here, that Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo. This is a subsidiary subsidiary railroad of Canadian Pacific. It was jointly owned with New York Central and operated in, well, as it says, Toronto area, but I don't think it actually went into Toronto. It was Hamilton, and I think between Fort Erie, which is on the other side of Buffalo, on the Canadian side, and I think it ran through Hamilton for sure, and I think a little bit north of Hamilton, probably to a junction with the Canadian Pacific. And I think it also ran to Port Coburn, I think it is, some little town with a little port on Lake Erie, I think it is. Anyway, this is very cool. This is like I said, the subsidiary road, and it was absorbed into the Canadian Pacific straight up, I think around 1978. So this car would have been almost new around 1976 or 75 maybe, and it would have only spent a couple of years like in this paint scheme, and then I guess it would have been transitioned into the silver. They would have probably painted it into the CP silver, or maybe they would have painted it into the CP rail scheme. So in any case, that's the second type, and of course I have the third type, which is here, the Trinity ones, which I'll give you a little more of a view of it. So the Trinity cars are exact rail. They have troughs, and they are representing the newer type of car that CP is using for grain service. And yeah, that would be for grain because it's got the troughs. So really like the CP beaver shield there. These are the newest grain hoppers that I have, and they're also lettered for Soo. This is interesting. This is not CP. It says Soo there. So these cars were all lettered for Soo Line, which of course was absorbed into the Canadian Pacific system in, I think, the mid 1990s. So that's really cool. And these are actually Soo cars. Yeah. So I have some other cars that are lettered Soo, that are Soo Line, but these ones are sublettered Soo, but are Canadian Pacific, because Soo is wholly owned by Canadian Pacific now, I believe. Yeah, and then there's my bridge on my little layout here, little test layout, and this is my grain elevator, which I showed earlier in another video. Needs a little bit of fixing, but I'll show the backside of it when the details are fixed on it, because this building is very large and very intricate, and from time to time some details get a little bit buffed around, so I gotta do some fixing on it. So if you like what I do, please subscribe to Cool Trains in Montreal. Have a good day.